We were getting ready to jump on here and have a conversation about spirituality in mental health for this episode of the Just Start the Conversation podcast. It's brought to you by St. Luke's Penn Foundation. You can visit pennfoundation.org. And as we got into the topic of spirituality, we started jokingly saying, just talking about prayer and how you feel about spirituality. And that maybe sometimes you don't even need to record a podcast. We all just need to sit down and talk to each other, fold our hands, and see where things go from there. We have got just the expert to talk to with us today. She is Heidi Tierney. She's the Network Director of Pastoral Care at St. Luke's. Again, our topic is spirituality in mental health. I'm your host, Crockett, as always, joined by Amie, Allanson, Dundon. Ladies, I appreciate both of you being with us this morning. Thank you. We are looking forward to a great episode today. So Heidi, especially, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun.
It is. Amie, this is now our 52nd time, so I'm going to greet you, but we got business to take care of here.
Sir.
So how
Let's
are
go.
you? Everything's
I'm good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So, one of the things that we quickly touched on before we got started today was just kind of the idea of spirituality and how for some people, maybe that is a welcomed and warm feeling. And for some people, maybe that might be a little bit of a difficult thing to get in touch with. Heidi, I'm going to start with you and let's get to a baseline here. How would you personally define spirituality?
It is something that people utilize. It's a resource. It doesn't necessarily have to be religious. I think spirituality lives in religion, but religion doesn't always live in spirituality. I think it's a place for people, a resource for people to make meaning out of what's happening. It is a source of connection. We talk about being connected to self, to others, community, family. We talk about being connected to nature. All those different things can be utilized as we speak to people that are distressed, in helping them make meaning out of what's happening to them where they are.
Amie, I'm going to kind of ask you to piggyback on that one, on how you define spirituality, and in particular in your role that you're in, how does that spirituality play a role in someone's mental or emotional well-being, especially as Heidi alluded to, if maybe you're a loved one or a caretaker that is kind of carrying a lot of heaviness around at that moment?
Yeah, I think how I personally hold or view spirituality is very different than how I hold it for in space with clients. I think, and I also, so two different things. And for me, when I started out in training in my master's program, I started out heavily in the substance use, drug and alcohol world. And there's a little bit heavier emphasis on spirituality and higher power in the world of substance use disorder and recovery from substance use. If you look at AA and 12 steps, a large part of their recovery process has to do with one of the things that I learned as I was training to be a substance use therapist many years ago was really the only thing you need to know about God is that you're not him. Right. And that was kind of the lesson that was taught to recovering addicts and alcoholics. And it progressed for me in my career to, whatever you believe in, that's a higher power, something out there greater than you. There's no wrong answer for that.
Exactly.
Then that's spirituality, right? Yeah. If you want to give your worries to the doorknob,
yeah.
And that's the level of religion or spirituality that you have, as long as you're not feeling like you can conquer it yourself, that's fine.
Yep.
And then there are other people in psychotherapy and psychiatry and the mental health world who really do very much use prayer as a meditative coping skill, and their connection with their higher power, whoever or whatever that is, depending on your religion, very much as a big part of their recovery. So I use it differently for everybody, dependent upon how they see it and what it means to them.
What they bring, right? So it's what they bring to the picture. It's their narrative. It's their story. And so spirituality fits into that differently for everyone. It is a unique experience. My spirituality is different from yours.
Yeah.
Each one is different. And we meet people where they are. So if you want to, look at the doorknob and say, that's my higher power, then okay, we're going to go there.
It's
That's
interesting,
fine.
Heidi, right where you started in talking about spirituality and religion and kind of how they go hand in hand, but are also separate. Amie then went ahead and gave the doorknob analogy there. And I was like, okay, we don't need to discuss how they separate in this scenario. But I will ask, I have to feel like, depending on any situation that you're in, if you're feeling anxiety or stress or grief, I kind of alluded to in our open that maybe there are people that are very open to the idea of spirituality being a part of helping them along or recovery or anything like that. And then there's probably some people that maybe have never even gone down that road before, maybe feel like they've got a bad history with spirituality or religion or whatever may be a part of kind of their background. Heidi, for you, how do you support individuals from kind of maybe not necessarily religious backgrounds, not necessarily backgrounds deep in spirituality, in ways that can kind of help feel meaningful to them in a process that they're going through that might be a little difficult?
So we listen to their story, right? And so then in that story, I'm going to hear what they bring. So when was a time that you had a difficulty? And if we're in that, then what have you used in the past for yourself in order to get through that? If spirituality isn't something that you would identify with, or religion, it's a both and, right? It could be positive and it could be negative. A lot of people have negative experiences with quote unquote religion, right? Standardized religion. Yet if you start talking to them about, have you ever watched a sunset? Have you ever stood out at night and looked at the stars? What do you feel in those moments, right? Do you have a sense that there's something more than just you as an individual, that you are part of a bigger thing, And then we talk about, okay, so where do you find hope in where you are? And maybe like, I'm hopeless right now. All right. So then if we're hopeless, then okay, that's okay. We also, it brings me to say we normalize what people are feeling. And we'll say, well, that's fine. That's you. Maybe we can just hope in being together. And I'm just going to, the hope I want you to have is that I'm here with you and you're not alone. And so we just kind of reframe things for folks. But yes, I mean, it is both negative. It can be both negative and positive. And again, I'll say this probably umpteen times. We meet people where they are. So if it's negative, then that's fine.
I think that's really interesting where you kind of alluded to the idea of watching a sunset or looking at the stars at night. Like it almost feels like that feels like a really good spot to reset someone into this is an experience we've all had. Now, has that ever been a specifically warm experience for you? Have you ever had a wow moment, something that's spoken to you in that way? I think is a really kind of a grounding, let's try to, when you say you want to meet someone somewhere, for you in your position, I'm sure, and Amie, for you, there have been times where we've probably, at least for a second, looked up and seen a cotton candy colored sunset and been like, whoa, that's pretty cool. I've called the kids over and been like, let's go outside and look at this. So I think that's a really good spot to kind of maybe meet people kind of with their feet in the ground where they are. Amie, I'm interested to come to you and pivot here because for a person that's in your spot where you're talking to people, is there a certain point in time where maybe someone says something to you where you feel like, oh, I feel like maybe Heidi is a good person to bring along in this process? Just kind of that where ultimately you feel like maybe spirituality overlaps in you talking to someone who's dealing with anxiety or stress or grief in any of those situations?
Yeah, all of them. So, one of the things that we talk about a lot is Heidi used the word connection and connection to others. And very often folks are coming into psychotherapy or psychiatry feeling disconnected, unconnected. And depending on their spirituality or religion, I will 99% of the time then say, if you've connected to your faith in the past in a formal way, what pulled you away from that? And is there a way for you to get back, right? And so St. Luke's and most large health networks have pastoral care departments, have spiritual care departments, and they are always available if we are stumbling in the outpatient mental health world with a direction for someone, or maybe somebody has a particular religion or faith that is less familiar to us, to call Heidi and her team and say, hey, this person is maybe Buddhist, or this person is atheist, or whatever, and really looking for connection to somebody. And they will give resources, or often say, yeah, we'll reach out to them and we'll help. So it very much helps with people who are looking for a way to connect, is where we'll use Heidi's team. And I'll also say pastoral care folks are very good at mindfulness. They're probably better than a lot of our therapists. And I mean that respectfully, because our therapists are amazing. But mindfulness is your jam, right, Heidi? Like prayer and centering yourself, and just the way she described the sunset and the stars, that's mindfulness. Right. That's part of dialectical behavior therapy. It's part of learning coping skills. So often we'll connect them to spiritual care to dive deeper into that if they have a stronger connection to their faith. Often, I will say always, when there is palliative care involved or death and dying related to maybe a diagnosis or a medical condition that somebody is struggling with, we will involve pastoral care to help with, and palliative care to help with that kind of either new diagnosis, or to help to kind of find faith and spirituality when they're feeling pretty lost. Whether it's, oncology, or whether it's, palliative care or hospice, or whether it's a family member who has a loved one who's been diagnosed with something that's scary. Oftentimes, Heidi's team is a very good place to connect them.
Heidi, I'm curious, in the way that people express themselves in terms of spirituality or religion, there might be people who have very obvious tattoos, or wear something around their neck, or something on their, something that they wear every single day. And maybe for you, that might say like, oh, this is a road that we can go. And that perhaps maybe that person isn't as far down that avenue as you had anticipated. I'm curious for you, the expression of spirituality today, are you seeing it in a different way than maybe you did 5 or 10 years ago, and how people are maybe putting themselves out there when it comes to spirituality or their religious faith?
Absolutely. First of all, we don't make any assumptions. So I could walk in a room and see somebody with a tattoo, and there are times where you might make an assumption. We make no assumptions. I may be curious. I may say, what does that, I see that tattoo. What does that mean to you? Where were you when you decided that you wanted to, where were you emotionally? And I would listen for things like that, if they had those things. But really it's about being curious with folks. And yes, I would say there is less religion in people's spirituality. I recently read a statistics. I don't know if I should quote it because I don't remember where I read it, but it's 53% of people will say that they are religious, right? I would imagine that was a lot bigger number, say 25, 30 years ago, right? Spirituality is different for folks now because we look more at, and I think, connection to nature. go for hikes, connections to people, like we were talking about, things like that. So it's more about, spirituality is more about being connected.
I've got kind of a twofold question here. Amie, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. So the question I have is, how can spiritual care help individuals navigate feelings of guilt, shame, or existential fear, something that may be on the horizon that they are trying to experience? And with that, Heidi alluded right off the bat about the community, the people that can kind of lean into each other. I'm looking in particular at the caregiver perspective with this question a little bit, in that if you're a loved one who knows that, we've mentioned palliative care. Obviously, we know what that means in kind of being a caregiver in that situation. Amie, I'm going to start with you on this one. I'd love, Heidi, for you to give your thoughts on this as well. But just maybe the idea of... I don't want to say, I'm trying to think of how to put, you're allowed to feel what you feel, of course,
right.
But perhaps maybe what you're feeling if you are a caregiver or a person who is there in support for a person that is the one that is perhaps under palliative care, the person that is diagnosed with X, Y, or Z, or whatever the case may be. If maybe there is a point where you have to step in with a boundary and say, listen, I want you to feel everything that you're feeling. But in this scenario, are we doing the best that we can for your loved one right now with what you're feeling? I know that's kind of a tough question, but I'm interested in the seats that you're both in, the ones that can kind of give the outside perspective and overhead view. That idea of how spirituality and individuals can navigate the existential fear, and also their support team, how you can help the support team who maybe is... I don't want to say not helping, because I don't think that's fair. Feel what you're feeling, but that maybe is, for a lack of a better phrase, not helping someone who is in need.
Mm-hmm. That's a tall question.
I know. I wrote so many things down as I was trying to say it, and I felt like that was the best way, was to kind of put those two things together.
I can.
Go ahead, you start, because I want to hear you first.
So when we're dealing with people about their feelings, right? Everyone's feeling is legitimate. You can't say that what they're feeling is wrong. Sure. Right? Because they're being their authentic selves, and their feelings are real. And so they're legitimate, and they can have them, right? So I think when we're talking to somebody that has guilt or shame or fear, and maybe these emotions aren't helpful, you put it in the perspective of a caregiver, and, feeling those things in front of the patient, you could say isn't helpful, but I might say that we can't protect our loved ones from what we're feeling. Mm-hmm. And there is power in doing it together. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, those moments may be hard and they may be difficult, but they're real. And that is the best place you can be in, particularly if you're looking at somebody who is at end of life and you have a caregiver there. That is the most real you can be in those moments, right? Yeah. And as a spiritual caregiver, I would make space for that and just hold it with them. Whatever their fear is, whatever their angst is, if they're angry, caregivers are often angry about what's happening.
Sure.
So yeah, we make space for that, and there is no feeling that is wrong.
Yeah, and I would say anger was the one emotion in my mind that when we were talking, you were asking the question, Crockett, that I was going to, because I think anger is often the surface emotion that comes up when we're dealing with hard things, whether we have a loved one who has maybe attempted suicide, or we have a loved one who's been diagnosed with schizophrenia, or we have a child who's been diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder. Anger is generally the first emotion we go to because it's the easiest one. And if you picture the picture of an iceberg, the tip of the iceberg that you see that's out of the water is anger. The other 4,000 real emotions is the stuff beneath the surface. And that's, I think, where spirituality comes in, is the stuff beneath the surface, the emotions beneath the anger. It's very, very, very common, and in fact, useful to feel anger, shame,
Absolutely.
guilt, worry. It's how do we unpack those feelings in a really, like you said, Heidi, collegial way where we're doing it with the people. We're not doing it in a vacuum. Spirituality, the way that I see it work best, is done with raw emotion, raw unpeeling, raw questions.
Yeah, sitting and holding grief, sitting and holding the anger with somebody and just letting them talk about it. For me, it's not about fixing anything, right? I'm not here to fix anything, right? I'm more in the moment, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of the beautiful things about your profession, Heidi, is that you sitting and holding space oftentimes is fixing, but that's not your intent.
No.
Right? I'm trying to fix. As a licensed clinical therapist,
might move
I'm
them
guiding
along healing.
Right. Correct. And I'm giving them the tools, right, to help them reach their goals. And one of those tools might be connecting with a religion or their spirituality. But holding space, like Heidi's team does with patients, is the same as holding space in a therapy office. It's just we're allowing the feelings on Heidi's level. We're looking at it from a more spiritual way. In my world, sometimes it's less spiritual.
Well, you guys are diagnosis and treatment.
Yeah.
Right. I
Right.
mean, that's not my world.
Right. Yeah. Listen, if we talk about let's take the environment of a hospital, right? And the emergency rooms, the ICU bays, the trauma bays, the regular medical med-surg floors. That's where Heidi's team is so instrumental in people's medical healing, to hold space with people at the worst moments of their life. And oftentimes, spirituality for you, I think, Heidi, at least initially, if somebody has come into the ER and there's been a traumatic motor vehicle accident, sometimes you allowing them to sit and cry with you for 10 minutes is what has to happen.
Yeah.
For them to start to feel real feelings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you talk about, mental health and physical health and spiritual health, right?
Yeah.
That's all part of somebody's well-being. And we all play a piece in that. And that's what the beauty is about working together, right? To working with our mental health experts and our physical health experts, and then we have our spiritual health experts. And so when all those things are working together, then we are meeting that person's needs to feel whole, for their well-being.
It's so interesting, Heidi, the way you put that. I had to chuckle when you were talking, and Amie had made your point, and you were just like, "That ain't my spot. That's your
that's my world."
I know what lane I'm on in this highway. You got that one. I got this one, and then of course you mentioned the physical nature as well, physical therapy.
Yeah.
What's interesting, Amie, you had said that the first word when I asked that question that came to your mind was anger, and I think angst. Heidi, you said the word angst, and I feel like maybe that's the word that I was missing in trying to get it to the two of you, of just that unknown, that whatever the case may be, we've kind of alluded to different scenarios where that might be, but just that feeling of angst that I can't control. Something has happened and I can't wrap my hands around what that is. And whether that's you are the person going through that, you're the caregiver in that scenario. I think angst is a really good word to use there. Heidi, I want to come to you because as we talk about the physical, the mental, and the spiritual side of things, for someone who says that they're spiritual but not religious and maybe unsure about where that has a place in their mental health journey, or I should say, Amie has maybe had a conversation with a patient and has decided this is a good spot for us to collaborate here. If you come into the picture and you have someone who says like spirituality, yes, maybe not necessarily religious, the place that has in kind of their mental health journey.
So it's a part of who they are. So it's a part of their mental health. And I would say spirituality more so belonged in those places, right? Their spirituality is about their value system. It all comes into play. So it's very much a part of our mental health.
Yeah, it's actually a question we ask on a psychotherapy initial intake assessment is what role does spirituality and faith play in your life? Because it's important for us as therapists to understand whether that person says, oh, I'm a devout Catholic, I went to Catholic school, I go to church once a week, I go to confession, versus I haven't believed in God since the day I was abused as I was a child, right? So very different paths, and it's important for us as therapists, again, to know our lane. And for me to know, okay, maybe there's a God question that I'm turfing to Heidi. I mean, just because that's not my lane, I'll diagnose, but when it comes to diving into God and what God is, that's Heidi's lane. Oftentimes, the angst shows up for us in mental health with that kind of fear of the unknown, that fear of death, or that fear of non-existence. Or when, I've had patients who, when you say, have you looked up at the stars, and they'll say, yeah, it's freaking scary. Don't look at the stars because it's like nothing. Like it's like, it's so scary to think about how vast the universe is and how small I am. And so people can get lost in that too. As much as it can be a comfort, people can get very lost in the unknown of the universe and of spirituality and of existence versus what happens after I don't exist.
Right. And if someone were to respond that way, I would say, okay, well then where are you then? What is meaningful to you? If you're lost in the vastness, then where do you find your center?
Yeah.
Heidi, I want to come back to you and one of the early points, and I had mentioned community coming up earlier in the conversation, and I kind of want to come back to that again. For your team, for yourself, kind of the community or resources that people may have if this is either familiar territory, new territory to them, gaining an interest in kind of spirituality and how they feel like it can help them or a caregiver, just the community that is your team, perhaps some places and resources that you have there at St. Luke's that you feel like could be valuable to people if this is something that they feel like maybe either they're curious to explore, haven't ever explored before, but just maybe some good resource points that maybe you would like to mention for people that are looking to dive in a little bit more into their spirituality.
So, we have staff chaplains at every hospital. We have hospice chaplains that are there for our palliative and end-of-life hospice patients. We have support for our staff. We have a staff well-being leader who is there strictly to support staff and help them navigate their work, their home life, the stresses of both, and how we navigate that. And we're seeing increases in resiliency for our staff and career management as well. So that's a big part for our network. But for patients and for families, right, we are available. We're always available. We have 24/7 coverage. We have chaplains. We have a chaplain supervisor. We have crisis response chaplains that the network calls. And if there's an emergency, our folks are there. We have a crisis response team where we have chaplains and behavioral health therapists that go and meet with a team of our staff that have just experienced it could be anything, a tragic event. It could be a drowning of a baby. It could be the death of a coworker. It could be a suicide. All those things. And we go and we talk to them.
We go together.
Yeah.
Mental health and pastoral care, respond to those together. We work very closely
Am I answering their question?
Yeah,
no,
I think my follow-up to that would be, what about people that don't go to St. Luke's or that are listening in another state, or how do they get connected in their community?
Well, I guess it really depends on where you are, right?
But what are some...
So, I mean, there are faith communities everywhere. There are mindfulness, if that's not your thing, if religion and structured religion isn't your thing, right? And it's not for a lot of people. I always say that religion is a human. I may get in trouble for this. So religion is a human construct, right? It's born out of people's relationship with God, and so everybody's relationship and experience of life is different. So that's why we have all these different faiths and all these different rituals that come to us. They're born out of people's experiences, and that's what was meaningful, and that's what they shared with others, and out of that grew a tradition, right? So find what is meaning for you now in the moment. That could be a Buddhist community, it could be a Christian community, it could be, and everything in between. Or if it's not, then, maybe it's just finding someone that practices mindfulness. Somebody who practices yoga, right? Getting in touch with our bodies, our centering selves. There are spiritual directors out there. Several of my staff are spiritual directors, and they have people that they meet with. And those are journeying with folks who do have a sense of their spiritual self and are looking for kind of direction in life and how we utilize that.
Amie, whenever we're talking to a guest, I'm always interested, and sometimes I'll wrap up with kind of this idea of, hold that, because we could have a whole nother episode. Heidi, I've got to say, you really kind of caught my attention with discussing what goes on in your own walls at St. Luke's, the mental health of the people who are in there every single day, the role that spirituality plays just in the St. Luke's orb, I'm sure would probably be for people that are in the first responder scenario or in scenarios of trauma, just what it might be like under your own ceiling, I think would be a really fascinating conversation. I thought today was excellent. We'll keep that one in the back pocket for another time.
Yeah.
So Heidi, I want to thank you. Heidi Tierney is the Network Director of Pastoral Care at St. Luke's, discussing spirituality and mental health with us today. So Heidi, I thank you for your time. You were amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So good to have you here.
It was fun.
And Amie, I got a bit of breaking news to share from before we started recording today. This is our 52nd episode, so over 50 episodes for a podcast is really great. That's excellent. We've had thousands of downloads. We've been downloaded in almost 50 different countries. I'm very happy to share with you and Jen and the whole team over there. You can now add award-winning podcasts for the Just Start the Conversation podcast with St. Luke's. Myself and our team here at Cumulus submitted the podcast to the Pennsylvania Association of Broadcasters, and this podcast has been selected as the award winner for outstanding use of digital media. So an award-winning podcast
Yay!
here.
That's amazing.
Start the Conversation podcast. So to you, my friend, I love doing this show with you. To everybody back there, I know I always say thank you and I appreciate you every time we wrap up. It's definitely true. And just congratulations to you, my friend. This has been great.
Oh, congratulations to everybody, right? Everybody that works on this podcast. Crockett, you and your team are amazing. St. Luke's is very grateful to what you do for us and this partnership. And I'm super excited because everybody that works on this podcast deserves this award. So thank you.
Absolutely. A wonderful team. Thank you again to you all. I'll say it again. I appreciate you all back there who aren't in front of it here with Amie and myself. So that feels like a pretty good place to wrap up.
That's a great place to wrap up.
Yeah, it's a Just Start the Conversation podcast. It's brought to you by St. Luke's Penn Foundation. You can get more information at stlukespennfoundation.org and wherever you get your podcasts. For Heidi, for Amie, for the whole team of the award-winning Just Start the Conversation podcast. My name is Crockett. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.